right, I think we're ready to get started here. Almost. Almost. 1 second, guys. Oh, interesting. Interesting. All right. Welcome, everyone. I know I am starting really late tonight. I was on some other calls that were quite fun, and so that was a good time. So we have some good topics for us to talk about tonight. I'm doing this no notes, no nothing, so it's going to be off the cuff. So see what ends up happening. So we're going to talk about protecting ourselves from toxic people. And I really want to dive into this conversation and how we can go about that and how we can make sure we identify that and prevent those things from happening. And how to protect ourselves through that. So, if this is your first time joining me, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach. I help people with dealing with things like depression, anxiety, past trauma, going through that and moving through it so that you can get to a happier place. Myself, I share from my personal experience, my strength, my hope of exactly what has worked for me, things that I have learned along the way. And my hope by sharing this with you is that you are able to pick up some of this information and are able to take something away that you can actually apply to your life. And so let's talk about toxic people and what that is. And what does that mean? So, and especially nowadays where you have so much information online, um, that I think sometimes we get a little bit carried away with our perceptions of things. And I'm not minimizing violent experiences or anything else like that. If you're in a violent situation, then make sure that you get the support that you actually need, and get the help that you need. Um, so for myself, I grew up in a violent home. There was sexual abuse. Now, it wasn't always like terrible. This was stuff that just kind of happened. There was a lot of drinking, fights would break out. This was a normal, ongoing thing for our environment. And so to me, growing up, that was normal. That wasn't toxic. It was only once I got older and I realized that other people didn't actually grow up that way. Then I realized I'm like, oh shit, that wasn't such a great environment to grow up in. And because of that, I learned all these maladaptive coping mechanisms that don't actually serve me in my adult uh, life, and especially if you've been around other people that haven't been through that kind of stuff. They don't operate the same way, and so because of that, I learned these certain ways of behaving that ended up affecting me, and so because of that, you end up reacting to things that maybe don't need reactions. Um, and you maybe don't respond in a way that is healthy for you. So this let's tie this back to like what defines toxic. So if we think in terms of like um, say a fish, okay? If a fish is in water, it is fine, it's happy, it has everything that it needs, all of that kind of stuff. Now, if that fish is a freshwater fish and you put it in salt water, it's going to have a problem. It's going to have a bad time. Same thing if you take a saltwater fish and you put it in regular water, it's going to have a bad time. Now, if you take that same fish and you actually put that in a tree, it's really going to have a bad time. So sometimes the toxicity, now if that fish is around a bunch of birds and the birds is like, man, this guy, he can't friggin' fly, he sucks, he's terrible, all of that kind of stuff, the fish is going to be like, yeah, I guess I am terrible. Yeah, I guess I do suck, and I can't do all these things that these other guys can do. Look at them; they can fly. They can, you know, they eat worms. I eat worms too, but hey, like this is not right. So for that fish is in a toxic environment. Those birds are actually toxic for them, especially if those birds tend to eat fish. That's a whole other whole other thing. But so sometimes being around so-called toxic people is just you are you have different ways of behaving, different skill sets, different mindsets, different physical attributes, and when you're around those other people or in those environments, they can become toxic to you because you are not equipped to fly. You are not equipped. Just like the bird is not equipped to be underwater. So we have to we have to understand what is actually toxic for us, right? So defining what kind of behaviors do not help our nervous system, do not help our well-being, our sense of purpose, our sense of hang on just a second here. Are you okay over there? Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. It's a bit of a disjointed talk tonight. So, example, if I am somebody who is I like a lot of structure, I like a lot of guidelines, I like written rules, thank you so much, Oscar, for the rose, I appreciate you. If I am somebody who likes that, it makes me feel secure, it makes me feel safe to have written rules, instructions, guidelines. I don't like a lot of surprises, all of those kind of things. And that is what makes me feel safe, makes me feel regulated, makes me feel supported, cared for, loved, any of those kind of things. Um, and surprises really upset me and bother me and stuff like that. Maybe too much noise, wild things, loud music, any of those kind of things end up dysregulating me, then being with somebody who likes a lot of loud music and partying all the time, and they've always got something on the go, and all of those kind of things, then which one of us is toxic? Because the other person, they're kind of like, hey, if I had to live in a library all the time, where it's quiet and I had to follow the rules, all of that kind of stuff. And they're much more free, outgoing, like they like to dance, they like to move, they like to sing and joke and laugh and do all kinds of fun, wild stuff. Which one of those two people is toxic? Well, they may be a little bit toxic to each other if they don't learn how to appreciate each other for the ways that we've all learned to cope. So there's different styles of how we learn to cope with situations. Some of those are effective, some of those are effective for a little while, and then some of those are effective um, only in specific situations. And then when we try to apply those strategies into a new situation, they become maladaptive. They become ineffective for what it is that we're trying to do and trying to achieve. Um, so one of the examples is I grew up in transport and logistics industry, and there was always jokes around there's no crying in freight. And so being all touchy-feely and caring about people's feelings and all of that kind of stuff did not get you anywhere. It was a hazard to be sensitive, to be kind, to because you wouldn't get the job done. You had to push, you had to get the answers, you had to find out where the shipments were, why they were late, and you had to make sure that the drivers got their paperwork, and you had to make sure that stuff got there on time. You had to answer for it. You had to check metrics. You had to make sure your costs were in alignment, and you had to make sure all of the shipments were covered. They were all planned. You've maximized the size of the load. You've done all of these kind of things. So there's a lot of moving parts. And there were certain processes and structures that we did follow to kind of go through that, but you didn't have a whole lot of room for, uh, small talk. You got direct to the point because you had no time for anything. So I just kind of grew up in that environment. It actually correlated well with what I grew up in real life, that there was always some sort of drama going on, that there was always some sort of crisis that needed to be dealt with. And because of the environment I grew up in, I developed those skills. I knew exactly how to deal with a crisis. I did not know how to deal with calm. I did not know how to deal with peace. I did not know how to deal with people getting along. I knew how people fought. I knew how to prevent things from escalating. I was able to be good at negotiating so they didn't get too out of hand, but I was also very direct to the point, and like a commanding kind of the because the way you had to write the SOPs, do this, do that, don't do this, right? Like it was always very, very direct and commanding. And I remember when I went back to college for computer programming, I remember getting complimented on, oh, your writing style is very, very structured, very commanding, and stuff like that. And it's from all the years of having to write out SOPs that you had to write a very clear, direct step. And there were certain structures of how you write those SOPs that it started with a command word rather than. And then I had to learn how to adjust that style when I was sending emails, because that email that I would send was too commanding, and people would get bent out of shape about my emails. And the funny thing is the people that I reported to, they know who I am as a person, that they know I'm like this like really kind, bleeding heart softy kind of thing. But if you read one of my emails, I come off like a total asshole. So, and it's not that. It was just because of all the years in transport and logistics of just learning how to communicate in a very direct, and I think probably a military style, because the people that taught me, they were from logistics backgrounds, and they all had U.S. military background, right? So a lot of them came from that kind of background. So you just learn to adapt to that. And then if you try to take that out to some of the other things, it would come off as toxic. So why I speak about that is because what I need people to understand is that we are always somebody's toxic. Okay? So it's easy to label other people and other people's behavior as the toxic behavior. But when we do the inner work, we start to look at our own toxic behaviors. We start to look at our own demons and the things that we have going on inside of us. And we start to understand where we learned those behaviors. And I really want to stress that these are learned behaviors. So I really have a problem when people say, oh, the person's a narcissist, they're a psychopath, they're this, they're that, the other thing. It's like, okay, I'm not saying don't protect yourself. I'm not saying that. Please protect yourself in whatever way that you feel actually makes you feel safe, and do the thing that you need to do for you. Okay? I'm not condoning any bad behavior. I'm not trying to let them off the hook. But to say that they cannot be fixed is bullshit. Okay? I'm not saying it's an easy task. I didn't say that either. But every human being, they behave in certain ways because it gets them the results. They get something out of it. It gets them the results that they're looking for. And it we are all, whether we like to believe it or not, we're all conditioned beings. We are all programmed beings. And we've learned everything that we think, everything that we believe, everything that we value. We have learned that over time of what we think is right and what we think is wrong. And in certain situations, those variables can be changed depending on the circumstances that we are going through. Now, this doesn't mean don't have any values, don't have any structures, and don't do any of those kind of things. You definitely want to have some sort of baseline value of things that you believe to be are true, that you believe to be are good. What you do need to understand, though, is that everybody is operating off of that same principle. And when we actually try to seek to understand, rather than being so fearful and dividing each other and pushing each other away, going, that behavior's wrong, that behavior's right, this behavior's wrong, this behavior's right. And we do this with ourselves as well. And so when I started to learn about how I was critical with myself and how I was being mean with myself, how I was holding myself back, now I had to understand where that negative self-talk came from. That negative self-talk came from other people teaching me that, either through I observed their behavior and they were being critical with themselves, and so therefore it's learned through osmosis. It's not a direct teaching. It's not something that you're told, oh, you should do this instead of this. Nobody tells you, oh, you should be hard on yourself, or you should beat up on yourself, and you should tell yourself that you're a piece of shit. No, nobody tells you that, but you learn that over time through the behaviors of other people that are around you. You learn that through watching family, friends, coworkers, significant others, any of those kind of things. They start doing those kind of things, and we start sharing in that energy. Okay. Um, and although it's like you have to, it's like respect the power of influence, was one of the things. So you maybe it's too difficult for you. Maybe you don't have enough strength within you to be able to set a boundary or go against what the rest of the people are doing. So if you can't beat them, you join them, kind of thing. So you end up caving into that. And then what ends up happening is we start to behave like them. And then if somebody else comes in that's new and is not used to that kind of behavior, they may view that as toxic, where you view it as normal. So your normal can be somebody else's toxic behavior. And I'll give a simple example. A friend of mine, we were both transport and logistics girls. We're used to kind of being those strong, women. We speak our mind. We say what we need to say. We're very direct to the point. We have a twisted sense of humor, kind of thing. And so we're kind of like those tough girls. And I don't seem like one of those tough girls. I had to learn to soften. Um, but in going through this stuff, like her and I, we would be like getting a coffee, and we would just kind of like be going back and forth, and we'd be like bitching and venting and just kind of doing this back and forth thing. And it wasn't any big deal to us. And we'd be like calling each other out on different things. And everybody, like when we were in new environments where people didn't really know us, they thought, oh my God, they're having a fight. They're having a fight in the office. And we're like, what are you talking about? We're just talking. Like, this is just how we be, right? So we didn't realize, because we had gone down to like, and this was after like an office change. We had moved from one office, which was a little bit more warehouse focused. Um, and then we moved down to a little bit more of a corporate office feel. And so we kind of brought our truck driver, like warehouse worker kind of speak into like this office of moms, I guess. So they were more like mom kind of women, and very careful about whether or not they swore and stuff like that. And we're dropping f bombs like they're punctuation, seasoning salt to the conversation, and so they were a little bit taken back when we came down. So on our side, we were viewed as the toxic ones because we were saying all these things that weren't appropriate, and we were loud and we were boisterous, and sounded like we were always fighting. And we're just like, okay, that's just us having fun. And we didn't think anything of it. So we had to learn to adapt our style to soften our tone, to keep things down a little bit, not drop so many f bombs, and they also had to learn on their side to not take everything so personally, and not to um, see. They saw our passion as a good thing. It's a sense of drive rather than you know something that we were trying to take over, because we weren't. We were actually very collaborative. So um, those are just some little examples of, it's very easy to look at somebody else's different behavior, and if we don't like that behavior, then we just automatically label that as toxic. And that is not the case. Everybody is behaving in a certain way. Now, it doesn't mean that they aren't an asshole, doesn't mean that they are doing the right thing, but it's a matter of understanding, why are they doing the thing that they're doing? Are we just allowing them to do that without actually saying anything to them directly? Because I don't know how many times that there's been situations, and I've been on both sides of the fence of this, so I'm not saying that I'm innocent with everything here. So I've been on the side of the fence where I've looked at somebody else's behavior and went, that's bullshit, and said nothing. And then I have been on the receiving end where somebody else thought my behavior was total bullshit and said nothing. And I felt, when that happened to me, I was like, well, that's unfair. Like, why would you not give me the chance to change? Why would you not give me the chance to explain why I behaved the way that I did? And, same thing on the flip side of, it's unfair of me not to speak up and say that, hey, this thing that happened, it really bothered me. I felt like this. And it takes strength. It takes emotional strength. It takes being able to do the inner work to be able to speak up in that manner, because we are putting ourselves in a vulnerable position by saying, hey, what you did bothered me. Because if you grew up in a toxic environment, letting people know that what they did actually hurt you, actually got to you, might have been fuel for them to continue that negative behavior and to put the screws to you even more. And I've experienced that quite a few times where you speak up and say, hey, this really bothers me. And it's like, now they have clear weapons against you, and they use them on a regular basis. So it can be very difficult for us to actually speak up about what it is that is bothering us, and to share that with somebody, right? Because it requires us to be able to um, get to a point where we can accept whatever answer that they give us. It's not whether or not they change their behavior. Um, it is more important for us to speak our truth of what it is that is bothering us, and how much it's bothering us, and how much we are able to, what it is we would like to see changed. And then in our own minds, we need to understand, well, I've spoken my truth without having to go through and keep controlling with it too. So my rule of thumb is I speak my truth, I speak it clearly, I speak it directly, and hopefully they will follow through with it. And then now that I've spoken it, and if they don't follow through with it, and then it happens again, now I have another decision to make. Do I continue to allow that behavior? Did enough of it change where, okay, I see that you've made some improvements, however, this is still bothering me, so now I have to restate the boundary, have to bring it back up again, which isn't always easy to do. And you have to restate it and say, make sure that you acknowledge any improvements they did do, and then restate what it is and why it's important to you and what you want to see changed. And be also willing to hear feedback from them. So we can't just set that boundary and not be able to hear that feedback of what it is that maybe there's certain reasons of why they did what they did, and understanding those kind of reasons. And maybe when you have that information, you could be like, oh, I didn't know that you were looking at that way, and this is like, you can have some dialogue and communication as to what's really going on. And that can give you enough information to determine whether or not do you actually need to restate this boundary. Is it that important, or did the new information give you a different perspective, a different insight to allow you to change or shift your perspective about the situation? And so when we go through these kind of things, we also, as we go and restate that boundary, we restate what it is that we need. We also have to know with ourselves, what is our bottom line? If certain things don't change, are you able to allow for a slow progression, or do you need it changed immediately? Some things, they have to be changed immediately. Example, if somebody lost their temper and they got physically rough, that's an immediate change. That cannot happen again. And if it does happen again, then you need to put in some very strict boundaries and decide whether or not that you need to stay with that or you need to go. And being able to make sure that you can follow through with that bottom line. Hey, Esker, good to see you. Thank you for liking the live. So these are important things to understand about what it is that we are willing to do to protect ourselves in a particular situation. And by protect ourselves, I mean actually communicating, actually talking, actually being vulnerable with the person that we're dealing with and saying, this is what I would like to see. When these things happen, I feel like this, right? So try to avoid using the words you make me feel, you did this, so I did that. That's not the right thing to do. If you're focusing on, I felt this way because when I saw this behavior, I felt that it meant this. Is that the case? So you're seeking to understand. It gives the person a chance to determine whether or not they actually meant to do that, or maybe they just didn't see it from that perspective. Maybe they were reacting out of something that has gone on in the past for them. And if we look at everything through a filter of understanding that all of these behaviors that we have, whether they're empathetic or they're narcissistic traits, whatever it is, they're all on a spectrum. And understanding that it's not a fixed state. It is flexible. It can be moved. Those needles can be moved. And if you feed into negative behavior, then that causes people to feel justified in the way that they behaved. So it's important for us to be able to make sure that we mitigate and manage our own reactions. We understand our own emotions of why we're doing what we're doing. And this is really hard for people who are empathetic, because it's so much easier to point the finger at somebody who is narcissistic because, or has those narcissistic traits, because they are so much more outwardly obvious as to that they are only self-focused. However, with some of the inner work that I've done, I've had to look at where my um, empathetic, nice behaviors were actually rooted in fear, just like the narcissist's behaviors were rooted in fear. And they behaved, maybe they reacted more aggressively, more punishing, those kind of things. Well, people pleasing has its roots in fear as well, and still trying to control. We're just trying to control from a different angle, right? So when you start to look at those kind of things, and you see that is there's it comes down to two things. There's love and there's fear. Everything is either an expression of or a cry for love. So any negative behavior, any bad behavior, even if that comes across as being supportive behavior in the beginning, if we end up getting hurt by it, we were doing something out of fear. We didn't speak up because we were afraid. Maybe we didn't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Maybe we didn't want to speak our truth because we would be looked bad upon. Um, how many times have we, as empaths or people pleasers, said yes when we really wanted to say no? How many times did we put on a smile when we really wanted to say fuck you, right? So these are the things that empaths like myself have to take full responsibility for. It's too easy to just label somebody else as, oh, they're the narcissist, they're toxic, they did this, they did that. No, like I said, I'm not saying don't protect yourself, because some people, they're very wounded, and hurting people hurt people, so they act out negatively. But we can't control somebody else's behavior. We can persuade, we can influence, and we do that by staying in command and control of our own emotions, our own thought processes, our own behaviors, our own reactions. When we manage and mitigate that piece, that's all we have responsibility for. And if we are in situations where we are repeatedly getting hurt, then is it really the other person's fault, or is it our own? Now, if you're in a situation, one of the things that I try to do as much as possible is I try to think of the worst case scenario. If this person fucks me over, betrays me, backstabs me, does all of these things, am I still okay to do the thing that I was wanting to do? If I still give to this person and they not only don't give me anything back, but they deliberately try to harm me, am I okay with that? If I can't answer yes, then I shouldn't move forward with that. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't give in the way that I'm giving, because all that will do is set me up for resentment, anger, fear, and then I will be crying out for love. That is not a good thing. So, extreme ownership is something that is a very powerful tool and way to live your life. It is not an easy thing to do. It requires accountability on a great level. And I'm not talking about like, I don't know if you guys have heard of like egg theory, and you can check that out online, and it's kind of like we're all one, and I get that. And so that means we are, everything that's ever been good. We are also everything that's ever been bad. And so we have good and bad in all of us. And you're like, yeah, but I've never done anything like that, Tina. This person was so bad, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I know. I mean, I used to, and it's like, before any of that stuff, like growing up, I used to referee fights between my sexual abuser and my mom, and I would be able to, I had this gift of being able to point out, I could see his area of what he was feeling fearful about, and I would be able to explain, this is what he actually sees. This is what he's actually feeling. And he'd be like, yeah, yeah. And then I would also see that with my mom's side, and I'd be like, this is what she's actually feeling, and this is what's actually going on with her. And she'd be like, yeah, yeah. And because I could see both sides, I was able to mitigate some of the fights and the challenges, because I could help them find a little bit more of a middle ground rather than being so polarized, complete opposites. And you can only do that when you come from a place of love and a place of wanting to find a solution, that there is no bad guy here, that there is no bad guy, that we are all operating with the best of our intentions. We are all trying to find a way to do what gets us the best result. Now, I'm not saying that there's some people that their version of what the best is maybe a bit skewed, maybe a little bit on the outskirts of what is best, and you may have to protect yourself from those kind of people. I'm not saying don't do that. What I'm saying is, at all times, we have the ability, we have the responsibility to protect ourselves in any way that we feel we need to, without trying to harm another person. Not always easy. And even with the best of our intentions, we can accidentally harm other people, oftentimes if we are in a reactive state. Um, and even when we're not in a reactive state, we can do things that hurt other people, that hurt their feelings. And if that's not our intention, being able to understand why that hurts somebody else's feelings doesn't mean we necessarily have to change our behavior. Maybe we still have to hold firm, because sometimes when we're just trying to take care of ourselves, other people may take that personally. They may take that as a personal slight. And I think the goal and the objective for all of us is to be able to um, understand, if I, so if I find myself taking somebody else's behavior personally, I have to ask myself, what is it that I'm afraid of? Because say maybe somebody distanced themselves from me, they're not talking to me, and I'm thinking, well, I didn't do anything to deserve that. Why are they doing that? And that's not fair, and that's not right. When I am in a good space, when I am in a loving space, I don't take that stuff personally, because I can see that that other person is reacting out of fear. If I've done everything that I can to clear up my side, and um, not saying that I'm never without fault, but if I've at least, with the best of my intentions, have never tried to harm somebody else, and they take some of my behavior, they react and they pull away, they do something, and what I have to do is look at that and know that that's something going on with them, that they're having a reaction within them. Just like if I react badly, that is on me. Even if somebody does something, whether it's intentional or unintentional, if I have a negative reaction to it, that's on me to be able to understand what is going on within me. Why am I reacting so strongly to this? If it's a work environment, there were times that I would react very strongly at work if I didn't feel like my opinions, my ideas were not being heard. So I would react negatively and I'd get really upset about that, not realizing that that was tied to like 20% of it was what's going on today. 80% is from the past where I wasn't listened to, I wasn't heard, I wasn't validated, I wasn't valued when I spoke about being sexually abused. So I had this negative reaction every time somebody, I felt that somebody wasn't really listening to me, wasn't that I wasn't being heard, that I wasn't being valued. When I learned to make that connection of, hey, this happened in the past and I'm actually replaying this in the current state. When I realized that, then I could kind of go, oh, okay. It takes the sting out of what is happening today. It puts it back to where the majority of it belongs. And now I can deal with just the 20%. And instead of being over the top reactive, I can kind of go, hey, you know what? I don't really feel like my ideas were being heard here. I need to understand why you don't feel those are valuable. What am I not seeing here? And really trying to get to some sort of collaboration, some sort of solution, and act like a reasonable, responsible adult rather than a reactive, wounded child. So when this is the value of doing that inner work. Um, and so the best way for us to be able to protect ourselves from toxic people, toxic environments, is understanding our own emotions, what's going on with us, and valuing ourselves enough that if this is a toxic environment or this is a toxic person and they are not treating us the way that we feel like we actually deserve to be treated, then the question becomes why, where did we learn that that was okay for somebody to treat us that way? Why is it that we feel like we are unable to change that? Do we feel like we have no other choice? Is that true? Maybe there's certain things that there's certain circumstances where we're being physically constrained. Maybe there's financial constraints that you don't feel like you have the means or the vehicle or the opportunity or um, the, the internal strength within yourself to be able to do that. Those are the things that actually need to be addressed, right? And then being able to understand what is it that we are doing that contributes to that cycle. That is part of the healing inner work that we need to actually do. To how am I contributing to this continuing? What is it that I need to change? And don't be beating up on yourself if you find yourself going through the same cycle 2, 3, 4, 200, 100 times. Doesn't matter. It's not so much, it's not so important how many times you go through it. It's, are you learning something new every time you go through it? Are you seeing this in a different way? Are you learning to let go of whatever fear is there and understanding the fears and moving yourself to a space of love? How can I look at this through the eyes of love? How can I look at this as an expression of love rather than a cry for love, right? So that's the fear state. So it's really important to, if we're going to look at anything, it's either there's love or there's fear. And fear is false evidence appearing real. So love is the only thing that's real. So if we focus on that, we focus on how is this a good thing? How is this a loving thing? How can I be more loving in this situation, not only to the other person, but to ourselves? Okay? When we are loving with ourselves, when we take care of ourselves and we value ourselves, which can be very, very challenging to learn how to do if you've not actually been shown examples of that or very good examples of that. So we have to seek, well, what would make me feel loved? What would make me feel safe? What would make me feel secure in this particular situation? And we have to face some hard truths with ourselves sometimes. Sometimes we stay in certain situations, in certain environments, because it feels safer to us than actually leaving. So there's usually some abandonment wounds, some trauma wounds that um, children who've been abused, negative attention is better than no attention at all. Neglect is a very, very powerful form of abuse, and it's a very, very damaging form of abuse because there's no physical scars. It wounds us at a deeper level. Um, and so neglect is, I think, one of the biggest forms of abuse. And that took a long time to kind of clue into that. So if we have been neglected in our childhood, if we have not experienced, if we just experience the basic care, the bare minimum, then we carry that with us into adulthood and we uh, treat ourselves only with the bare minimum of love and understanding for ourselves. And we become intolerant when we require more than the minimum. So it's a matter of understanding our own behaviors, our own toxic behaviors, and what it is that we can do to support ourselves, value ourselves more. When we do that and we love ourselves more, uh, that draws that kind of energy to us as well. And other people start to see that we get to be the change we want to see in the world. So if other people around us are being toxic, don't try to change their toxic behavior. Write down what it is that they're doing that's toxic. Oh, they're always criticizing. Okay, always criticizing. So look in your own behavior. Where are you always criticizing? And maybe it's not with them. I don't criticize them. I don't do that. Well, maybe it's yourself. Maybe you're always criticizing yourself. Maybe that's where the toxic behavior is in you. And that's what you need to stop, is stop criticizing yourself. Maybe they aren't giving you enough attention. Maybe they aren't giving you enough love. Maybe they never say anything nice and support you. Maybe they, whatever it is, list out the things that that toxic person is doing to you. Write it down. And then ferret out where you are doing that in your life. This will allow you to become so much more compassionate. Because when you understand why you are doing that in certain areas of your life, and you're like, well, shit. Oh, okay. I did that. Oh, I remember that. I started doing that because back when I was 4 or 5 years old, this thing happened, and um, I thought that meant, like, I saw my parents fighting about money, and I thought that that meant I shouldn't ask for anything. And so when, you try to ask for something as an adult and, you get pushback, maybe you feel like somebody is attacking you and not treating you fairly, and this is why you can't get the things that you want in life. And it ties back to something that you actually went through. When you start to see that and you start to see why you had certain reactions, then you can develop compassion for yourself, first of all. Everything that you do, it has to be, let it begin with me. So if you want compassion, you have to be compassionate with yourself. If you want understanding, you have to be understanding with yourself. You want patience. You want somebody to listen to you. Are you listening to yourself? Any of those kind of things. This is, I can promise you, if everybody focused on this instead of jumping on the bandwagon of this person's toxic and that person's toxic and this person's crazy and that person's mean and all of that kind of stuff, I promise you, any of those things that you want to criticize or point out, I'm not saying that you can't make good judgment, good discernment, and decide that, you know what, that's not a battle I want to fight. I've got other battles I'd rather fight. That one is a little bit too much. Or I've fought that battle enough. I'm not fighting that one. I'm going to go over here, right? So you can choose to do that. I'm not saying you can't. It's more a matter of, don't waste time with the labels of they're this, they're that, they're toxic, they're horrible, they're this. It's a waste of time. Fuck the labels. To hell with all the haters. Just focus on what it is that you need to do for you. Focus on your own abundance. And I know that's money there. It says in God we trust. Okay, focus on God. Focus on love. Focus on what it is that you need to do to leave those demons in the past, and focus on what it is that you need to move forward um, for yourself. And just know that if these lessons, they keep coming up over and over again, maybe you got hurt in them, and yes, you have to take responsibility, but don't do it in a sense of, oh, you have to take that responsibility, like, we're all one, and if you don't like something in somebody else, then that's on you. Don't do it in a fucking punishing way. Please don't do it in a punishing way. That doesn't help anybody. That doesn't serve anybody. It definitely doesn't serve you, because all you are doing at that point is you're taking something that is meant to be a good tool, a good structure for you to look through, a good lens for you to look through, and you're turning that into a weapon to be used against you instead of a tool to help you see and help you understand. Um, that's much more important for you to look at that from a perspective of love, even for yourself. So don't don't be one of the people that is like, oh, you got to take extreme ownership and like, don't friggin' do that. That doesn't, like, all that's doing is beating you down, and that suppresses your feelings, and you're allowed to feel how you feel. You're allowed to feel like somebody hurt you. You're allowed to feel like somebody was being mean to you, especially when they were. Feel those feelings, and then decide, respond how you want it to change going forward. And if you're in a relationship with somebody who truly cares about you, they're going to be able to hear that. They're going to be able to seek to understand. They're going to be able to give you maybe a different perspective. But communication absolutely is the key thing here. That has to happen. Where we get into trouble is when we get all of our exercise jumping to conclusions about what somebody else's behavior actually means. And I don't know, there's been times, I mean, you tell me, has there been times you've been, you know, we have to admit to ourselves when we took a little bit of delight in getting our lick back, right? Sticking it to somebody, showing them up. We all have that capability within us. We all have the capability to be mean, to be a bit of a dick. And so we need to pay attention if we can do that, and we deserve that forgiveness. and we deserve that understanding, then so do the other people. And when we do things that encourages the appropriate behavior and don't respond to the negative behavior, then people will learn very quickly that it's not effective to to continue with the negative behavior because it now no longer gets them what they were looking for. So maybe, it's like I see a lot of parenting TikToks and stuff like that. It's like the kid that never gets any attention from his mom unless he freaks out because his mom's always on her phone. And then when he freaks out, she finally puts the phone down and gives him attention. Well, guess what? He's now learned that behavior that every time he freaks out, he will get attention. So this is where, and then the kid gets labeled as bad because, he is always freaking out to get attention, and, you know, he becomes a little narcissist and all of that kind of stuff. And all of those, you, you, we train people, we teach people how to interact with us. And if we don't like how they're interacting with us, it's not a matter of changing their behavior, it's about it changing ours. And it's changing what we don't like, and what we allow, right? That doesn't mean just start cutting people off. I mean, sometimes that's necessary for whatever reasons, and you have those reasons, and that's completely up to you. If you feel that that's what you need to do, then do that. Um, and you choose what kind of behavior you allow in or don't allow in. And I can promise you the most damaging, most toxic person you're going to have to deal with is the one that you look at in the mirror every day. That's the one that is going to cause the real problem, because there's been many times throughout my life that I have had people, they'll talk shit about me and it doesn't have any impact on me whatsoever. It's like, it doesn't even phase me. And I'm like, they might as well be calling me a purple unicorn, and I would take that to heart just as much when I'm in a good space. When I am not in a good space, when I am in a state of fear or a state of not feeling good enough, then somebody can say hello to me and I will take offense to it, and I will twist that around, and what do you mean by that, and get defensive about stupid shit and take things the wrong way. And they're not even trying to do anything to hurt me, but when you are in that fearful state, you see everything through that fearful filter. So when we understand what's going on with us, and that if people are trying to harm us and we take that to heart, it is us taking that on, believing that to be true, is where we start to feel that pain from that. If we don't believe it to be true, then it doesn't cause us pain. It might be annoying, but we kind of look at somebody going, "What the hell's wrong with you?" like who hurt you? What, like, did you get hit on the head? That's why you think I'm a purple unicorn? What kind of drugs are you tripping on, man? Right? So like we automatically, because we know within ourselves, I'm not a purple unicorn, so what's wrong with that person? But when we get hurt about something, why is it that we're not saying, well, what's wrong with them? We take it on and it's like, oh, ouch, that hurt. Oh, I'm so wounded. And I can make fun of that right now because I'm in good space, right? Maybe tomorrow morning you could ask me the same thing and be like, no, they were mean to me. They're toxic. They're horrible. So the best way to protect yourself from toxic people is, number one, don't be a toxic person to yourself. Number one, don't be a toxic person to yourself. And we can be toxic people to ourselves if we do not do the healing inner work from the stuff that we've learned behaviors over the years. We've been taught certain things. We've been taught to be critical with ourselves. We've been taught because it was effective to keep us safe, to take the blame of everything, or whatever it is that we have to look at. This is what we have to look at and make sure that we are our own best friend, that we are not the toxic entity for ourselves in the situation. And then other people's behaviors, if we have done our own inner work, we can now see when they are struggling, they're going through a hard time. And it's just our responsibility for us to focus on love and to recognize when we are crying out for love, because when we are in that negative space, it is a cry for us to get support, to get love, and to be able to communicate that effectively and ask for what it is we need is um, much healthier all around. And when we start doing that, other people start to see our example of doing that. And we start to demonstrate a healthier way of being. And other people start to become influenced by the change they see within us. So that is the best way to protect yourself from toxic people, is just don't be one to yourself. So guys, I hope you found that helpful. If you are jumping in on the training, I will be uploading this to my YouTube channel, which is Coach Tina B 125. You can catch my previous replays. I did get caught up on all the recordings and got them all uploaded, so it's just this one that needs to be uploaded. You will also see the artwork that I create uploaded there, and you can purchase prints, or you can purchase different things like mugs, laptop, mouse pads, skirts, t-shirts, any of those kind of things, bedspreads, shower curtains, any of that kind of stuff. And it'll be artwork like you see behind me here. So there's that one. I don't think I have this one uploaded yet, but I will be. I've got about 78 pieces of the artwork I've created uploaded on Redbubble. So that is one way that you can help support so that I can continue to do this free training. And the purpose of this, the goal of this, is to be able to help 1 million people heal past trauma, to see how this isn't just stuff about, digging up the past and how we were hurt in the past. It's understanding how this is still operating in our day-to-day, in our business, in our jobs, in our relationships, in our family dynamics, in our friendships, in our relationship with ourselves. It is all tied back together, and it's not a matter of getting stuck in the past. It's a matter of understanding, where did I learn that initial conditioning, that initial behavior, so that I can start to make different decisions, especially if I'm feeling stuck about something that I feel like I'm not able to change things. And we don't solve this all overnight. This stuff takes some time, but when we learn to go through the process of how to dig through this, how to get to the root of where this started, and understanding the connection from what's going on today to what happened in the past and how we got to this place, that brings a level of awareness, a level of clarity that helps us be able to make different decisions, and thereby changing our future, thereby breaking those chains of the past and having it no longer control us emotionally. So, guys, I hope that was helpful, and I will be on again tomorrow, probably closer to the 9 p.m.-ish. And thanks for stopping by, even though tonight was much, much later. All right, guys, so it is late. It's, wow, it's actually 1:30 a.m. I need to get sleep, so... Anyway, not too bad, considering. I'm pretty pleased with that, considering I had like 0 notes. I was a little stressed and overwhelmed when I first started, but did a little bit of meditation, clearing my mind, grounding myself, help me come on here so that I can share some wisdom, share some insights of things that I've done. So, one last time. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.